9:35. Welcome back. Here it's WRMN AM 1410, WRMN Radio on YouTube. And the rock stars are rolling in today as we have Jamie Mosser here with us now, Kane County State's Attorney, who's here from time to time. Welcome back, Jamie.
Thank you so much for having me again.
Thanks for being here today. Great Thursday morning. Lots of sunshine outside. We're going to be in the 60s by next week, Jamie.
Oh, thank goodness.
Although
I will be in Cabo next week.
You will? Well, it'll be in the 60s at least there then.
It's a much-needed vacation. I cannot wait.
I hear you on that. 9:36. So there's a few things. I think one of the main things you were here to talk about today is this human trafficking unit, and we're going to get to that in just a moment and spend most of our time today on that. But we just had Corrine Pirog here, Kane County Board Madam Chair, and we also had a few protesters standing outside, everybody peaceful, just making their point with their signs, and that's fine. That's American freedom, right?
Right. It's the healthy part of our democracy that we can disagree.
Right. So obviously this is a pretty heated issue. There's signs up in the ground in around Kane County from those who oppose this, and but obviously the Kane County Board wanted to put this on the referendum and get it passed, and so it is is going to be on the ballot this spring. Do you have any general thoughts on it?
So when I was first elected, we obviously saw that we were going to be in a deficit many years because we saw that our expenses were increasing, but our revenue was not. Then we got thrown so many unfunded mandates like the Safety Act, where then especially public safety kept going up in terms of what our expenses were. And so this is a decision that the board has made, and it is one that while I don't want more taxes in our county because I'm in our county, I don't want anybody else to do, this is one that will at least put the tax out to every single person who comes in Kane County. So if somebody comes into one of our stores, they get that tax as well. And frankly, of the budget for Kane County, judicial and public safety has the majority of it because it is the sheriff, myself, the circuit clerk, the coroner, everyone that the chairwoman mentioned. Public safety is paramount, and we can't ignore that because unfortunately the board itself has chosen not to find alternative ways to increase revenue as we saw our increase in expenses. So basically, if this is voted, it sounds like to me from my talk with, and I guess this is maybe not your conversation, but it sounds like to me that if this is not passed with a yes, then there's a good chance that property taxes might end up going up because they're going to have to replace the revenue they feel like they're lacking in some other area. And that's something that the board can put into place without the voters having anything to say about it. Correct.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah. And so is it fair to say that there is a lack of staff or that Kane County is short-staffed in certain public safety areas right now to where if funding is cut more, that safety is going to be an issue? And I guess that's the first question.
So I would say yes, and I can really speak more towards my office and the sheriff's office because those are the ones, obviously I work within my own office, but with the sheriff's office, right now, I believe that both our offices are operating at a level that we can maintain. We should have more individuals so that there's lower caseloads, more people out on the streets, things that we can to make sure our community is safe. If you're going to ask us to cut those individuals, that's going to be cutting departments that are providing public safety, and I don't think we're in a position to do that.
So chances are then, and I'm just thinking out loud here, if we're not going to cut back on staff, whether it be law enforcement or other areas, because we want to maintain the public safety of Kane County, then the other option would be find another way to raise the money, which would then be probably a property tax raise.
Correct.
Right?
But even that would be a percentage of what the sales tax would bring in, because property taxes can only be raised by a certain amount each year. The sales tax itself is just based on how many people spend money in Kane County. So it could bring in close to $50 million is what our CFO is saying versus the property sales tax, which, is $2 to $4 million, I believe, each year that if you raise it.
And the other question, I guess, is do you feel like qualified people are staying in Kane County longer because the salary is finally more on par with other counties in the state of Illinois, and that if if this doesn't continue, then we're going to go back to an old problem of staff leaving Kane County to go elsewhere?
I do. So when I first started, we had probably 1 to 2 people who were quitting every week because the amount of money that we paid from paralegals up to attorneys was ridiculous. When we were able to equalize that out in comparison to counties of similar size, we were losing less individuals. I barely have vacancies at this point because people want to work here and people want to stay here.
Okay, so those are the thoughts of State's Attorney Jamie Mosser. Sounds like you're kind of in favor of it. Is that fair to say?
I am in favor because it's going to fund public safety.
Yeah.
And because we're at a desperate time right now because of the way everything was managed, I am going to be voting yes for it because I don't want to see our community become unsafe because of money.
Okay. It's your choice as a voter, right?
Yes.
And I was just reading something earlier this morning about 37,500 vote-by-mail ballots are about to be cast, I guess. So it's good that more people are voting whatever way they can in the spring election. And if you're not going to be there physically, come April the 17th all the way through, March 17th through April the 1st, then vote by mail or vote however you want to vote, but at least then you can have the final say in whether this happens or not.
Exactly. It's your voice of what you want, so you got to get out there.
Okay, well, so we have that, and we have the human trafficking unit.
Yes.
Now, I get this from your office, saying there's going to be a press conference on Monday, March the 17th, and it's going to be discussing this specialized team dedicated to investigating and prosecuting human trafficking offenses. That's what you want to talk about today, right?
Yes, correct.
Okay.
So this kind of came about after we created our child exploitation unit. And you and I have talked about that on the show before. What was happening in Kane County, in Elgin and Aurora, they have detectives who can run down child exploitation cases. And those are the child pornographers. It's a lot of work that goes into those cases because you're doing a lot of grand jury subpoenas, you're having to sit on houses, you're having to execute search warrants. And so our smaller communities don't have detectives who are able to do that. So these cases were just going uninvestigated. And what we know is that our internet providers, Google, Google, Yahoo, if they suspect child pornography, they turn it over to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, who then turns it over to the state Illinois Internet Crimes Against Task Force, who then funnels it to the individual police departments. This is a thing that we have access to, and I've often said this before, the city in Kane County that has the most downloaded child pornography, St. Charles.
Isn't it crazy?
It is crazy. I live there also. So one of the things that we wanted to do was to actually start investigating these cases. And so we created this unit that had 2 dedicated investigators, a part-time forensic analyst, and a prosecutor. We quickly realized that that wasn't enough, and we had to expand the unit. So now we have 3 full-time investigators, a full-time forensic analyst, and then we have a whole unit that's prosecuting these cases because we went from, I believe it was 3 in 2022 to 20 in 23, and then we were over 30 in 2024, and we're already trending more than that because we're investigating them finally and prosecuting, and we're getting some pretty significant sentences. So coupled with that idea is human trafficking or human exploitation, because we know it happens. It happened in St. Charles within the last couple of years, where the St. Charles Police Department, along with my office, Homeland Security, and a bunch of other police agencies, found a human trafficking ring in St. Charles, just behind the St. Charles Police Department, where we arrested 5 different offenders who were trafficking women here in our community. And so we know it's happening. We just need to be able to identify it and investigate it. And that's sex trafficking along with labor trafficking, which we'll see in some of our bigger businesses where they may just be taking advantage of people and forcing them to work for little to no money.
Okay. So why don't you maybe just give a quick definition of what human trafficking is exactly? Is this something that's been on the rise in recent years, and what is it?
Yes. So the National Bureau of Justice Statistics said from 2012 to 2022, there was a 26% increase in human trafficking cases that were reported. Now, everybody believes that's actually low because some of these things go unreported or just unidentified. We're only going to see that go further as we have more people that are coming into Kane County. And I'm not just talking about people who are here undocumented. I'm talking about people who are vulnerable. What we see is these traffickers go after especially kids who maybe are running away from home and then finding these traffickers. And so what they do is they either exploit them for sexual purposes, which means they're essentially selling them out to other people, taking the money, not giving these people any of the money, but just housing them essentially. Or labor trafficking, where you're forcing people to work for little to no money, long hours, just basically doing what it is that you need to do for fear of something, whether or not you're going to be physically beaten by them, whether or not somebody is going to threaten to call immigration on you, whether or not they're going to threaten to even call the police or to do something like that. And this happens in every community, and it's certainly happening in Kane County and at an alarming rate, in my opinion.
So do the kids or are they kids? Some kids, adults are also human trafficked, right?
Yes.
So it's a mixture of both. And so do they voluntarily get into this, or are they kind of sucked into it, or how do they initially get into being controlled by people like this?
So most of the time, it's just they're sucked into it. So a person, usually the people who are trafficked are in need of something. If it's somebody who is in need of shelter, in need of food, in need of something, or maybe they don't have a good home life, they inevitably find people who would take advantage of them. And this is what happens with the traffickers. There was a case that I worked on probably 10 years ago in DeKalb County, where it was a young woman who had a terrible upbringing. She had a guy that she was in a relationship with that was very abusive for her, so she just sought out anything else. She ended up finding this horrible trafficker who was eventually prosecuted federally, but she had been trafficked for a number of years, had no contact with her kids, just had a terrible life before she was finally able to get out of that with resources. And this is a person who had citizenship here. She had parents, albeit not the greatest family life, but because she was vulnerable and seeking out something else, he promised her a relationship, was romantic, and then sold her as a result of everything. It happens so quickly that people don't even realize it, but then they don't know how to get out of it.
And it's almost like once you get sucked in, it's like being kidnapped.
Yes.
To a certain degree. A lot of them, once they're in, they can't find their way out, right? Or they feel like they're almost blackmailed into it, where they can't figure out a way to get free from the jaws of being trafficked.
Correct. And where are they going to go? They felt so desperate to get into this situation that it's not like they have somewhere else to go. And that's why having a human trafficking unit, when we go through these investigations, our focus is going to be on protecting the victims, getting the victims out of there and providing them the resources that they need, housing, access to civil legal resources so that they could do whatever it is that they need to do. We even have a tattoo parlor that's willing to come in for free to cover up any trafficking tattoos that a person may have, helping people find jobs and get the treatment and resources that they need, all in a safe way that's on their schedule.
Well, with Jamie Mosser, Kane County State's Attorney, for about 10 more minutes or so. If you have any questions, you're welcome to give us a call at 847-931-1410. That's 847-931-1410, or I'm checking out the YouTube line at WRMN Radio on YouTube, and the Image 360 information line, 505-926-1410. I've got Hector on YouTube, and he says, how can I get a sex offender list for my neighborhood?
So if you go onto the Attorney General's website, or even just do a quick Google search that says, I want to look up the sex offenders in my neighborhood, you could see that they'll have little red dots. You could put in your address and see who's all around that. Because for the sex offender registry, which is maintained by the Attorney General's office, you could see that easily.
So we've said, you mentioned the number of cases over the past 3-4 years, how it went from 3 to, up like 30 or 40 or whatever. And now that's, and I have noticed, I'm noticing more and more stories in the news, even as Pirog last half hour pointed out from the newspaper. More and more of these pornography and child predator stories are coming out. People are being busted for it, pleading guilty for it. Now, this is happening before this new unit's even formed, right? So we're already on the right trajectory?
Correct. And right now what we're looking at is cases that aren't being investigated because we don't have the resources for it. And so the child pornography cases can easily go into human trafficking cases. There's no question about it. But they're different areas of law. The child pornography is somebody who's possessing pictures of underage children, either partially clothed or fully unclothed, or videos. And a lot of these individuals just share this stuff back and forth through the dark web to each other. It's a very insidious environment that they're all in, but they feel safe because they do it in their home. We've gotten CEOs, CFOs, firefighters, police officers, teachers, people in daycare, people that nobody suspect would be doing this, because it's one of those crimes where you can't see it on the outside and suspect that they're going to be a danger to somebody.
9:51 here at WRMN. So on the 17th, this press conference that you're going to have will kind of launch this whole new endeavor, which will then we'll probably eventually see a whole lot more people finally going down for things they should have been busted for a long time ago, right?
Agreed. And it's a great partnership with all of our police departments. So if Elgin finds that they have a case, we'll come in and assist them with it. It's not that we would take it over, but we would help out. The smaller jurisdictions will take those investigations. We're going to provide training throughout all of Kane County, including to citizens, so that if they see something, they'll have a way to turn that over. Because plenty of people have seen, like in apartment complexes, people coming in and out. That could be a sign that it's a brothel being run, and that's sex trafficking. And so we're going to give our community the tools to recognize this, to turn it over to us so we can investigate and prosecute it.
How many people are going to be a part of this new unit?
So we've already hired 2 investigators, and those are 2 police officers who have retired from police departments here in Kane County. We've hired a human resource advocate, and her job is to not only be an advocate when we have victims, but to find them resources. We've hired an advocate who will be there, so when we go and we hit a house or a place or business, there'll be somebody who's there and able to talk to them. We hired a prosecutor specifically for that, and he's the one who's kind of arranging all the transportation. And then we've hired another assistant state's attorney who's really knowledgeable about the civil legal resources. And so she's going to be the one that's going to kind of help provide some of that. And all of it's going to be managed not by me, but by the expert that we have here in Kane County, who is my first assistant, Christine Baer. She's one of the first people to have ever prosecuted human trafficking cases 2 decades ago. She created great law. She knows what she's doing, and she's going to run this whole thing and make Kane County really a shining example of what you should have in your county.
Unless the 0.75% tax referendum gets voted down. Then we don't have that money anymore, right?
I'm not firing any of these people. The board's going to have to figure it out one way or another.
Wow. So all these people will be completely focused on this alone, right?
Yes.
And that'll be the difference from the way it's been. It's been people doing their job and making some extra time to try to investigate these types of cases,
Correct.
right?
Yes.
So, okay. So we'll be hearing more about that in the time to come. Any other thoughts on that? I have a couple of other things I could touch on with you while you're here.
No, I'm really excited about this. I think Kane County really is an example of how we should be doing things throughout our judicial system. So I'm thrilled to come on in a year from now to let you guys know what we've done.
Maybe we'll have you on more often than that.
Well, I want to come for other reasons, but
Yeah.
we'll do a year anniversary to see how it goes.
Okay. Fair enough. So I guess while you're here, I don't know that anything's really changed or is about to change, but just want to give us a quick comment or quick look back at how things have been in your mind so far since the Safety Act has gone into effect, because everybody still has it on their mind, and people who are not happy with it constantly use that as the reason all this crime has gone up in their eyes and things like that. So I don't know, just a quick statement on that.
Sure. So we've been looking at it. The Safety Act, in terms of holding dangerous individuals, is working. People can't buy their way out. With that being said, there are people that should be held that can't be held because they're not a detainable offense. And we have plenty of examples of all of that. And so we are working with the legislators right now. We have a proposed bill that we're going to work through a senator that's going to widen the detention net for actual examples of cases that we've seen. I am really going to try to push that aggravated battery be a detainable offense. Aggravated battery could encompass anybody, a public place, a school worker, DCFS worker, a police officer, a nurse. These are all things that if somebody batters one of these individuals, I should be able to argue to the court that that person gets detained. And here in Elgin, we have a case where an individual actually punched a kid, which was an aggravated battery public place in St. Charles. He lives here in Elgin. We couldn't ask to detain him because aggravated battery isn't a detainable offense. He comes back to Elgin and stabs somebody to death.
Right.
We saw the escalation of his behavior. We filed a petition to revoke on another case that he was in, waiting for him to be able to come back in on that. So I think it works in some ways. It doesn't work in other ways. There are easy fixes, but we have to get our legislators to be on board with doing these easy fixes and trusting in the state's attorneys and the police officers who are doing this work to tell you why it needs to be changed for public safety.
So in theory, it's a good thing, but major adjustments need to be made as far as who should be held, who's getting out that should be held, like for aggravated battery, and then committing an offense that maybe in the past they wouldn't have been out to commit.
Correct.
Right? Because they wouldn't have been able to post bail or whatever.
Well, and the other frustrating part about this is our jail, because of Sheriff Hain, has a lot of great treatment that we offer to people. So we used to be able to track recidivism rates because we would treat the people within the jail, and when they got out of jail, the jail was giving them access to jobs and other resources. And so we saw lower recidivism rate because we were really treating the individual. Those are the individuals we can no longer hold because it's usually the drug cases or the retail thefts or the burglaries, all of which are non-detainable offenses, but they're committing the crimes because of untreated mental health or substance use or lack of resources. And so these people get out immediately and almost within a couple of days reoffend. So now we're bringing them right back into the system. And we're actually holding more people in the jail per our sheriff than we were pre-Safety Act because of these violations.
9:57 here at WRM, but the Safety Act is costing more, right?
Yes. Oh my gosh.
It's costing
yes.
more.
Yes.
And would the revenue made from bail or whatever that's not coming in right now, would that help offset some of the other revenue that is now being asked the taxpayer to pay?
Yes. Our circuit clerk said that she used to receive about $500,000 a year just from the 10% that's taken off of the bail amount. Then that was eliminated automatically from her budget. We are not collecting as much in fines and costs anymore because we used to take the bond amount and apply that to fines and costs because we already had it in our bank account.
Yeah.
Now we're having to chase people down to get the money. So we are seeing a lack of revenue because of the Safety Act. And frankly, an increase in expenses because I had to hire more attorneys, more advocates, more support staff just to be able to implement this mandate that I had to do. And that was across the board for everybody in judicial and public safety.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much for the time.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming in. We're out of time this morning, but always a fascinating conversation and great insight that you give. So appreciate you, Jamie.
Anytime you want me to come back.
Jamie Mosser, Kane County State's Attorney, joining us here on the first shift, and that's going to wrap the show up today. Great show. Thanks, everybody, for joining us earlier this morning, and then once we got into this discussion this hour with Corinne Pirog and with Jamie Mosser. Coming up next is Matt. He's got his show Out to Lunch. Enjoy the sunshine. I'll talk to you on a fabulous Friday morning at 6 right here on WRMN.